My little foot. No. Hi, it's Emma from High Noon Studios. I'm just sitting down to do a little video about sort of the 3 things that I wish that I had known when I started my business. You're bound to make mistakes when you're running your own business and you're doing something for the first time, but I think there are certain things that I learned that I think are very avoidable. And I know that you learn from your mistakes, but hopefully you can learn from mine, because you're going to be making your own. It's just inevitable. There's nothing wrong with that, but I just wanted to share some things that I wish that I had done differently when I started. So hopefully it's helpful to anyone who's either doing the same thing I am, a different sort of business, maybe you've already started, just sort of my 3 things that I wish that I had known when I started my business. The first thing that I wish that I had known when I started, or the thing that I wish that I had done, was to keep track of my finances. I did not start my business with the intention of going full-time like I am now. It was just like a side thing, and I decided to start selling because I had all this stuff building up and I wasn't just going to keep everything around. I actually did not start with candles. I started with weaving. I wasn't very good at it, but I didn't need like 20 wall hangings in my house. So I started on Etsy and I just did it for fun because I had the mindset that it was just a hobby and for fun and just like a side hustle because I had a different like day job. I didn't keep track of my finances. I didn't budget. I didn't do anything like that. And then I didn't have any sort of foundation when I got into full-time of how to track my spending, how to track what I was making. I had no idea if I was even like profitable or not. So I think even if it's just a hobby like it was for me, or if you're a full-time business like I am now, you need to keep track of your finances. You need to budget. I use QuickBooks and I have the monthly membership where it connects with TurboTax and I can file my taxes for free through them. So I do that. It's a free phone app. All you do is you connect it to your bank accounts. It just loads in all of your transactions and you can categorize them. So that way for taxes, it's so much easier. And then you can also see like what you're spending on expenses and advertising and shipping and what you're making. So it gives you a full summary of income and expenses. And you just want to make sure, even if it's just a hobby, like you don't really want to be in the red. So I think as long as you're selling, whether it's like a side thing or full-time, you need to keep track of your expenses, not just for taxes, but just to know how you're doing. Anything you want, it could be on paper, it could be a spreadsheet. I just really do recommend QuickBooks because it does most of it for you. Like I said, it connects to your bank accounts and you can create rules. Every time I get something from Shopify, it counts that as income. I don't have to go in and categorize that. It's very minimal effort and it just keeps everything on track, especially if you're doing taxes yourself. I wish that I had done it from the beginning so that when things started to matter, that I wasn't thrown in the deep end with like no direction. So that is my first tip, is to keep track of your budget, keep track of your spending, keep all of your finances in order. It's gonna make life so much easier. I'm sure you heard that advice before, and I had heard that advice like tons of times, but I was like, oh, whatever, like this is just a side thing, or it doesn't matter, I don't make enough. It does matter all the time. It's just something that you should get in the habit of. It doesn't hurt. Like I really don't spend that much time doing it. So that is my first recommendation. The second thing that I wish that I had done differently was to start small. I feel like this can apply to every medium, but especially with candle making, because there's so much equipment and storage involved. It does not make sense financially, space-wise, process-wise to have like a ton of different products and different inventory. I was doing like a different collection every week. They were all in different jars, they all had different scents, and it's just so much to manage. I think the best thing you can do with candle making or with anything is to pick 1 to 3 things that you can really focus on, you can really get proficient in, because there is so much more involved than just like having a product. For candle making specifically, you need to test every jar, you need to figure out what shipping box you need to use, you need to figure out the label size, you need to figure out the weight for shipping costs. So there's all these things involved that when you have so many variations, you have to start over every time. So I think for candle making specifically, I would get 1 or 2 jars that you use for everything, maybe a tin or some clamshells or something, but just keep your range really limited. And then you can do maybe like 6 to 8 scents. You can switch it up monthly or seasonally or something. Just that way, not only will you have a better handle on your inventory and what you're working with, but if you work with less and you make more, you can get higher quantity and then the unit cost goes down. So if you were to buy 10 jars somewhere, the price would be higher than if you bought 100 jars. The price per jar would be a lot lower and you can cut costs. So not only is it just like an efficiency and manageable thing to have less, but it's gonna save you money. And if you're trying to be profitable, if you're trying to make it a business, or you just don't want to spend all your money on your hobby, I think lowering the cost as much as you can is super important. It's something that I never really thought about, and I'll be doing a video on how I calculate prices, how I calculate spending and things like that. So I'm gonna be doing a whole, that takes its own video for sure. But I think if you start small, you're just gonna be in a better position. It's easier to scale up than scale down. And I say that with full experience. I'm in the process right now of limiting my collection to just one jar style, and it's a nightmare to switch everything over because I've already designed labels for different size jars and I've tested different wicks and things like that. So don't do what I did, start small. It's just way easier, especially when you're learning something new. It can be a little bit overwhelming to have all these different things you have to consider. So the easier you make it for yourself, the better it's going to be in the long run, especially if this is a thing that you want to do full time. You just have to think about longevity. Like, can you sustainably and reasonably continue having like a bunch of different jars and scents and themes? Probably not. I know that I can't. So that is something that I wish that I had done differently, and I'm in the process of changing. And then the third and final thing that I wish that I had done when I started was to just be organized. And I know that seems like common sense, like what do you mean you weren't organized? But I think when you start, you're not gonna have like nice shelving system. You're not gonna know how to keep things organized because it's something you've never worked with before. When I started, I would just get a big supply box from Candle Science or wherever, and I would just keep everything in the box, which is totally fine. But I would just throw everything in the box and I would forget what was in there. So let's say I needed to make an order and I had no idea that I'd run out of wick stickers, or I didn't know that I had a fragrance down there and I bought a duplicate. So I think just keeping track of what you have is way more important than I think it seems. Like, I don't think many people talk about staying organized. I hear a lot about like productivity and time management, which is also part of it, but like physical organization is so important. If you were to go and work at like a retail store or something, if you go into the back room, everything is organized, everything is laid out, you know how to find everything. And it should be that way for your craft room, your office, wherever you're working. You just need to know what you're working with. It can get really overwhelming when you don't know what you have on hand and you can't find it. So I wish that I had been more organized when I started. And also with my time, I think goes into that. Organizing how you work is very important, because when you're your own boss, or even if you have like a couple of people on your team, pretty much no one else is going to do it for you. You're probably the CEO, the product designer, the advertising manager, the customer service representative. Like, you're doing it all when you're a small business, and you have to get it done correctly and you have to get it done efficiently. So I think managing your time with a to-do list or a planner, just keeping yourself accountable. There's a fine line between making sure you get stuff done and not like pushing yourself too hard. You don't want to burn out. You still want it to be something you enjoy. So when you do grow, you'll have those foundations in place. No matter how busy, popular, whatever you get, you'll have the foundation to stay on top of things and you won't feel as overwhelmed. So those are the three things that I wish that I had done differently when I started. I'm fine, you know, I'm doing okay. I just think hindsight is 20/20, and I'm more than happy to share my mistakes so that maybe you don't make them as well. And if there's any words of wisdom that you have for me or anybody else, I'd love for you to leave them in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe and join the Candle Club, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye.